Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of my interview series on culture and diversity and equity. I have a wonderful guest here today, Cathy Cather, who's been an educator in the Metro Atlanta area for over 20 years, and I've known her for quite some time. She's a wonderful person and educator, and she has been Teacher of the Year previously. She's been a Science Ambassador, and she has won an award for Atlanta Family Award recipient. She has a lot of service in her community. And I invited her on today to chat about culture and so forth, because she can provide a unique perspective as she has worked in the Atlanta area for numerous years with children of color, Black children, and other children and so forth. And she has been able to harness their success in a variety of ways. So I'd like you just to share a little bit about yourself, briefly, about your current professional work as an educator, and anything else that you'd like to share about yourself, Cathy.
Okay, well, as you mentioned, I am a teacher for Atlanta Public Schools. I've been with the district now for about 24 years. I've served in various areas throughout the city. So I've had an opportunity to work with a diversified group of students. I've worked with primarily African American children, elementary age children. I have also worked with Vietnamese students and Hispanic students. And it's been a pleasure and a joy. Many of them I am still in communication with, still have relationships with their parents. My first class is now 31, 32 years old, and I had them in second grade. So it's just pretty amazing to see some of them go on to be educators as well, and parents, and doing great things. And just knowing that I had a hand in that really makes me feel good.
That's wonderful to see the continuity, to see them grow up and blossom into their careers. That's excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. The first question that I have for you today, Ms. Cather, is how can we affirm the identities of Black children while also demonstrating an understanding and appreciation of other cultures?
Okay, well, that's an awesome question, and I really can relate to that question. Currently, I'm at a school who is working on certification. We are in the final phases of our certification and authorization to become an international baccalaureate school. So we have embraced an international mindset. And with that being said, we embrace culture, diversity, language diversity, and we immerse our students in hands-on, minds-on, inquiry-based projects that allow them to not only explore their cultures, but the cultures of others, coming together to look for those commonalities, and those things that show that we are all basically the same. For our African American students, I think because I am at a predominantly African American school with a predominantly African American staff, it really just comes naturally for us to relate to the children, just based on our prior experience as children, and just our desire to want them to become, well aware of who they are and what they can grow up and do. So I think it's just something that we naturally do, to affirm, for them that, hey, outside of the things that we see on social media or on television, hey, have you ever thought about becoming a teacher, an educator, or what are the things that you want to do? So I think it's a responsibility of us as African American educators to pour that into our children. Another thing that I would say is just being transparent with the children, allowing them to see you make mistakes, um, telling your story of being an elementary student, and maybe some of the things that you dealt with or some of the obstacles you had to overcome as you matriculated throughout your academic career, and making yourself approachable and relatable in an environment that welcomes their questions.
I definitely like a lot of that you shared a while ago. I think it's important to be relatable, that you have that capacity to build rapport with the children and families that you work with, and that they can relate to you. You can give them little anecdotes about what was it like when they were children, when you were a child growing up, and things that maybe you were good at and not so good at. And just as a staff, how you can come together and build rapport with the children that you're serving. I think that's
Yes,
important. And then having activities, the hands-on
yes,
inquiry-based learning project space. I know in speech therapy, we do a lot of oral language practice and we can do performance and
mhm,
things like that. But it's not, it shouldn't just be worksheets, right? It's the more that they can do
right,
hands-on
right.
critical thinking.
And there are a lot of other things that we do throughout the year. I know because we are a predominantly African American school, and we do have Hispanic students. We have an 83% population of African Americans, 12% of Hispanic, and 2% of other. We do activities that encompass all of our students, of course. We don't want anyone to feel isolated or to feel as if their culture is not being acknowledged. I know if you were to take a tour of my school, as you peruse the hallways, we have pennants of each of historically Black colleges, pennants of different colleges because we want to promote that college and career readiness. And then we spotlight a college each Friday morning. We do a college wear day, collegiate wear day. We encourage the children to wear paraphernalia of the colleges that they would like to attend if they have it. And we give a little history on that university or college. It may not be a historically Black college, but we do spotlight historically Black colleges because for most of my staff, we've attended historically Black colleges. Another thing that we do to affirm their identity, we also have our community stakeholders come in for career day. They're able to, present to the children, tell them a little bit about their careers and how they got started. So that gives them something to aspire to. We have members in our community that are Hispanic, that are Asian, and of course, African American. So I think that it shows how we all come together collectively to promote that type of affirmation and awareness amongst our students.
I definitely like the ability to come together and have those different mentorships and partnerships within the community that kind of come in to do talks with the children and tell them about different careers and so forth, just building those relationships outside of the
Yes,
school building. I think that's very important. I know African American culture and Caribbean cultures and Latin American cultures, a lot of them are very collectivism in nature, where it's about interpersonal skills and group work and things like that. And other cultures may be more individualistic about, their goals and such.
yes,
But I know it's important to work on building goals for the entire community. How can we all cohesively work together for a greater good? And this time, Black History Month is a great time to uplift the Black community and to recognize
yes,
also Black excellence and things that African Americans have done throughout this country in a variety of different aspects in healthcare, in sports, in the arts,
yes.
in medicine and education. So many different things there, which is wonderful. Another question, we touched a little bit on this, is how has your background, life experiences shaped your professional pedagogy as an educator? And how do you specifically provide culturally responsive practices when teaching?
Okay, well, I'll just give you a little bit of history about me. I've attended private schools most of my life, and then, now I'm a public school educator. So that's a big shift for me, or that was a shift for me coming from that background. But I think for me, during my elementary years in private school, I attended schools that were fairly mixed, and didn't really have that many African American teachers at that time when I was in elementary school. But I do recall always looking for that one person that I could relate to. And for me, that was my kindergarten teacher, Miss Parrish. And she came at a critical time in my life because at that time, my mother had passed away. So I was looking for that connection, and I was entering first grade. And so I think for me, is just being able to go back to that little girl who was looking for somebody to relate to and somebody to guide her and protect her in this new environment, where she didn't have her mom at home anymore. And then I think when I got to high school, I had a better understanding of who I was, a better understanding of my culture. I would honestly say I don't think my high school did everything that it could do to embrace African culture the way that it did Jewish culture or the Asian young ladies that I attended. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. I really think that that was something that they weren't comfortable with, so they didn't know how to approach it with their African American female students. And I think that there may have been a clash there because we had come from strong families and strong households where they had already taught us things about our culture and history. So we had an idea of what things should look like and how things should be, and then not seeing it in your high school setting, was rather disappointing, which is why I ended up going to a historically Black college. Being able to go there and identify with other professors and students, and just the whole atmosphere was just embracing of me and our culture. And it was a big shift for me. So I think that would be the thing, always looking for the connect throughout, and even the ups and downs, still being able to relate and identify to my people.
Yeah, and I think the same. I think it's a great anecdote. The way that your kindergarten teacher was able to relate you and take you under her wing and teach you and nurture you and so forth. You turn around and do the same thing with all the lovely students that you have taught over the years,
Right.
and continue to teach. And then I can remember too, I've had lots of teachers in elementary school and so forth that were carried, and you kind of connect with them and sticks out to you. And I know growing up in Miami in high school, it was a very diverse area where I lived. But I don't necessarily remember them doing a lot of, they had cultural programs, after school
Right.
and so forth, but I don't think it was such an emphasis within the way that they taught. Your friends were diverse and some of the staff were, but it wasn't so much interwoven into the practices and so forth, which is interesting. And I know
Yes.
culturally responsive pedagogy or theory, a lot of it really has to do with the rapport building. And
Yes, the
also,
relationship.
exactly, that's a big part of it, relationship building and being able to really identify and connect with the students. That's a big part of it. And to increase the rigor, increase the expectations, right? So for African American children and other children that are oftentimes, especially our Black boys, that oftentimes, I know in special education, they're the ones in special education, and some teachers may think less that they can't achieve here, but in order to close the achievement gap, we really have to set the bar high so that they can rise to the occasion. So that's a big part of being culturally responsive too, is just recognizing the disparities in the achievement gap between races. It's true, it does exist. When you pull the statistics of, I teach mostly Black children and Hispanic children and special education, and just wide gap. And it's not that like there's only Black and Hispanic children who have IEPs or special needs. It's just they're more identified,
Right. Yes.
Why is that? That's a lot of times for another conversation that another friend's going to discuss. But it's true, we have to be culturally responsive and recognize the disparities there, and how, as educators, because I know my profession is 90% white Americans or Caucasians, so it's a small percentage that is Hispanic American, Caucasian. Speech therapists, how can they be responsive to know that, okay, are we identifying truly kids with a language disability, or is it a language difference? Is this articulation disorder truly speech sound error, or is it African American English dialect, or influenced by Hispanic language,
Exactly.
pronunciation? Because I know I speak languages about 4 different ways, it's like English, Spanish, sign language, and Jamaican Creole,
Wow.
So, that's a lot going on there. So if you have
a lot going on.
younger child, you're trying to determine if they're language disorder in kindergarten, first grade, you have to really be able to weave all those different things out. So being culturally responsive is just very important. And there's this awesome book that I have here. I have a couple different ones that I love. Zaretta Hammond, Culturally Responsive Teaching. She's an educator outside. I think she was from California. But she has, I like her approach to culturally responsive therapy. And she has, I probably will post some of this in my blog, but she has, I like how she discusses it as like cultural awareness and about the relationship building and about informational processing, and how we have to raise the bar and teach children to really think critically.
Yes.
It's her approach about going into culturally responsive therapy. I find it very interesting.
Yes.
She talks about the collectivism culture versus individualism cultures and so forth. So yeah, that's good. Can you think of anything else that you wanted to add about culturally responsive teaching? You touched on a lot of great points there.
Well, I mean, just to mention, just some of the activities that we do at our school. I know, like we celebrate Black History Month, of course, and we also celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. And again, we welcome in parents. We have the students to read stories to us in their native tongue for our Hispanic students, and having them to help the African American students make correlations between the language and the culture, the traditions, the food, and all of those good things. Prior to COVID, we could do a lot more to show them, hey, we respect Hispanic culture, we respect African American culture, and let's look at the commonalities amongst us, and let's find some respect and some empathy for one another and our plight and the things that our people have gone through. So we do a lot of that through our our social emotional learning, talking about diversity, and it's really good for the kids.
Yes, I think the social emotional learning piece is very important, right? So the kids can learn to regulate
Yes,
their emotions, to know that every day is not going to be a great day, but how can you find something good in every day, and how can you
that's right.
acknowledge whatever feelings and sentiments you're having that particular day, especially with all that's going on in the world. I think that is so important.
Definitely. Yes.
Acknowledge kids' feelings and help them to kind of regulate their emotions, and just checking with them. How are you doing today? How was the day? How was the weekend? Giving them a moment to share, whether we're in person or on Zoom. What do you believe are success keys for Black children to navigate the public school system, as well as later graduate university and or complete vocational training? I think that's important. That's a big part of my business, building
Yes.
successful lives. I just don't want them to learn their speech language goals. I don't want them to be
Mhm.
successful in life, regardless of
Right.
if they have a learning disability, autism, some intellectual impairment.
Overcoming
They can
those
all achieve
obstacles.
within their capacity in some way. So what do you feel working with African American children specifically would be something good for them as far as success keys?
Well, I think the most important thing would be modeling and aiding students as they set goals, showing them the importance of setting goals and working towards their goals in segments to,
Mhm.
and celebrating along the way as they accomplish their goals. I think that's the most important thing for our students is to set goals and to work towards attaining those goals. I think another important thing is the students need to have a strong support system between not just the student and the teacher, but alongside the parents. I think we need to also provide the parents with the support and the resources to promote their African American student as they move from one grade band to the next. The resources, the opportunities to participate with their child, to encourage them, and to feel comfortable approaching the educators in the schools for that help and for that additional support. A lot of parents aren't comfortable with asking for help. Um, a lot of them, if there is some type of language barrier, may not feel comfortable approaching for additional support. So I think alongside setting the goals and providing the support, I think that would be a great asset to the students.
I think it's very important. That's if they're a regular education student or a special education student, I think goal setting is very important. Even if you have
Yes.
a more severe disability, there's ways that you can do it as well with that. And then the parental involvement is key. I know sometimes in
Yes.
schools it's not always easy to get that, but you
Hmm.
can if you make a phone call and try to, lead with something positive, tell them something good their child is doing, even if they're having some rough days. Always try to lead with the positive. I think the more that we get that parent
Right.
buy-in, that's truly a learning partnership between the teacher, the speech therapist, the administrators, and the child, and then the family,
Yes.
the parents, the grandma, whoever they're with also has a role too, and they can
Mhm.
help reinforce and make sure they're doing their homework or studying for their tests or
It's
working on
true.
their speech
It's
skills.
all stakeholders are involved. Everybody's all hands on deck with helping the kids.
Exactly, if you
Right.
really want them to be successful. And I think too, for vocational training, knowing that, college is excellent. I definitely promote college, but good
Everybody's
for
not, that's not everybody's thing.
exactly. So I totally support if high schoolers they need to learn a trade. That's fine too. We need electricians
Mhm.
and plumbers and all sorts of things like that too.
That's
So,
right.
so I think vocational training and education is also equally important in my book. So
Right.
that is very important too. And if you're working with high school kids and older kids, then that's something that you can talk to as parents. And even middle school, they start to do goal setting for careers and so forth.
That's right.
You know, um, Ms. Carter, do you have any specific resources that you'd recommend for speech language pathologists and other educators to provide more culturally responsive practices? And if you just wanted to share any of your favorite children's books, I love books. I do a lot of literacy-based therapy in my speech and language sessions, or authors, engaging activities. I know the telepractice going on and Zoom sessions and in person, we're always looking for new ideas. So I just love for you to share anything as far as your favorites. You've been an educator for quite some time. So any
Well,
things that you
yeah,
love
I have,
to do and
well, of course, as I mentioned before, I love those activities that allow the students to bring in their traditions and cultures to the classroom. So I think that would be the best way to allow the students some agency in what it is that they want to bring to the table in terms of an activity, or what they want to share about their culture that makes it special and unique. I have had the pleasure of working with a student from Africa. I think, if I can recall correctly, they were Nigerian.
Mhm.
So that was awesome to have her come in and talk about some of the food, and she talked about the naming ceremonies and that type of thing. So having the other children be able to listen to her and ask questions, just the dialogue, allowing them to have self-directed dialogue and conversations with their peers and their classmates. I think that's a great activity to open up the table. And then, like I said, it allows them to ask questions and find those common links between themselves and others. And so that's one thing. Book wise, uh, well, initially when I started teaching, I think I really gravitated towards Patricia Polacco. Her stories and her books really touched me, because I like the way that she embraced the African culture through her stories. One particular book that I know by Patricia Polacco is called Chicken Sunday. And there's an African American grandmother with two grandsons, and Patricia and the grandsons make an oath to be sister and brothers. And their big goal is to buy Grandma Eula a pretty Easter hat. And so they come up with a mastermind plan to get her this hat. So I love stories that show children of different ethnic backgrounds working together and embracing each other. And then the other story that I like by Patricia Polacco is Thank You, Mr. Falker, because it's a snapshot into her personal life as a child. And I think that is a diversity to be a student who has a learning or a language problem, a language, issue, development issue, dyslexia. And another story is the story about Mr. Walker, and he is an African American person or character in the story, and he experiences racism. And so it touches on diversity and racism. So I like Patricia Polacco. I love Faith Ringgold, because she taps into the Harlem Renaissance. So it gives the children that art perspective, that creative mindset. So I love things like that. I love books like that, that inspire the children through creativity and cultural awareness, and acceptance.
I think that's great. I
Um,
think students, I've loved doing the Harlem Renaissance as
mhm.
well as different books about jazz, just because I love music too, and the jazz era. I always want to say, ooh, if I lived back then, you
I
know.
have a couple of others though. More recently, with everything that's been going on, you try to find books that you can do a read aloud. That's another thing that my school does. We have a Bitmoji library of books that reference the different groups at our school, the cultures at our school. So you can go into that Bitmoji library and click on a book, and you can start the day with a story about has an African American perspective or Hispanic perspective or what have you. But a couple of other books that I made mention of, excuse me, I'm sorry, that was Thank You, Mr. Lincoln. I said Mr. Walker. Um, One that I'm looking at is called Black as a Rainbow Color by Angela Joy.
Mhm.
Another one is A Girl Like Me by Angela Johnson. And then there is a book called Seeing Into Tomorrow by Richard Wright, and it talks about the infinite possibilities of students mastering their own fate through creativity and the creative process, not being limited to, just the things that people tell you, oh, I want you to be this, I want you to do that. But you know, tapping into what they want to be and how they want to contribute to the world.
I like
And then I
it.
had another book for adults as well.
Yeah.
But this one is I guess it's for us. And this is actually an online course that I was going to take. It's by Dr. Joy. I have a issue pronouncing her name, DeGrury.
Okay.
She has an online class, and it's supposed to help anybody who works in the education system, whether you work with adults or children. But she taps into the fact that we have to first address the trauma that we've experienced within our culture. So she talks about the post-traumatic slavery issues that we have that are ingrained in us because of the generational things that we have experienced. So Dr. Joy Brewery, she has an online class. She's awesome. I've watched several of her videos. I've not taken the courses yet.
The name
but
sounds familiar. I may have seen something online about that as well. I have to chat with
she's
you
good
about that. Yeah.
And I think I even have that book that you have. I haven't mentioned here, maybe a different one. African American Identity, Racial and Cultural Dimension of Black Experience by Jazz M. Sullivan.
Okay.
Is that what you have? And
I don't
Frank
have that one. So definitely in the
Okay.
footnotes of the blog, when I do feature this in the blog, I'll definitely list some of your resources so we can document that. So the speech therapists and educators, it's always good to collaborate and see, just to build our professional libraries and to build our classroom libraries or speech language therapy libraries for the children and families that we serve, so that they can all live a successful life and do well each grade, on their objectives that they're learning in school. I think that's good, some good resources that you shared there. Definitely. Any other additional words that you wanted to share with my audience about culture and diversity and really cultural appreciation for African American students?
Cultural appreciation for
I think you definitely shared some good information about affirming their identities and about your professional background and so forth, and just things that we can do as educators and therapists to make sure that we're being culturally responsive.
I think just primarily being transparent with the children. I think children know when you are genuine. I think if you just allow them to see themselves in you. That's it. Just allowing them to see themselves in you. And I think that will just open the door for a better relationship. I think that's why I've been able to maintain the relationships that I've had with my students over the years, even though they're young adults or adults now, is because I created that environment and that rapport with their parents and with their families. Children really know when you come from a genuine place. And I think our children especially, it's our job to do that for them. We owe them that, to be able to relate to us and approach us and come to us as a tangible resource for them, an approachable resource for them.
Right, that's wonderful. I think definitely we need to create a nurturing environment for the children and adolescents that we work with in the families, but also have the structure, right? So that they learn discipline.
Yes.
It's the balance between the love and the nurturing and the discipline so that they can learn to be respectful of others and so forth. So this has been a wonderful.
Balance is really important.
Pardon?
I said the balance is very important.
Definitely, definitely. So I definitely enjoyed this conversation and the dialogue today. And I know the folks that listen to my blog and website and so forth will be happy to hear your input on this topic on diversity and culture. And I will make sure definitely to list the resources that you suggested on the website as well. Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Carter.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.